We're going to continue in a bit of meditation and music before Gary and I both share our reflections. And we're going to open to 1037 in the teal hymnal. This is sort of like a responsive reading, if you will, a call and response with a speaker's voice and a sung refrain. This originally, the exact text of this song, this hymn, was written by Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs and is actually a reading in our gray hymnal called the Litany of Atonement. And it's reminiscent and likely was inspired by the Jewish Vidui prayer, which is sung aloud on Yom Kippur and has the exact same call and response. Well, I shouldn't say exact because it's in English and it has a UU flavor, but similar in that there is a spoken need for repair in a litany, and then a sung response of a heartfelt desire to make amends and make it right. So Gary is going to teach all of us the sung refrain, and then I'm going to do the spoken words and we'll go back and forth. I'll say the next spoken line and then everyone will sing the refrain, and we'll go back and forth as we engage in this musical ritual called We Begin Again in Love.
So you will see in your hymnal that it says narrator, and there's some stuff at the top of the page. And then there is the only set of staves that have lyrics. And that's the part we sing. And we just sing that each time. There are eight statements by the narrator. And we sing this 8 times. And it goes, we begin again and each other. We begin again in love. That's it. Can we try that?
Well, there's one thing though, the lyrics in here are different.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
Oh.
That's okay.
Oh, they're different from my mistaken reading of the lyrics. So sing the lyrics that are written in here rather than what I sang.
We forgive you, Gary. We will begin again in love.
So let's try this. We begin again and each other. We begin again in love. Okay, that's how it goes.
Take a breath with me. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we begin again with each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
we begin ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We begin ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Thank you.
I speak later in here about deep ruts that are dug in the path of our minds and that are very hard to get out. And we've just had a really good demonstration of that. And you're welcome. Well, I grew up in a middle class, what was called conservative Jewish neighborhood on the north side of Chicago. That doesn't mean what you think it means. It was the middle of the three grades of Jewish practice in Chicago, at least when I was born. I was 8 years old when I was sent to Hebrew school. And there I learned Hebrew as a modern language and the Jewish customs centered on the Sabbath and the principal holidays. I didn't know it then, but when I entered Hebrew school in 1950, the state of Israel was only 2 years old. We were taught about the Israeli pioneers, about planting trees and turning the desert green. There was no explicit mention of the Holocaust or where those pioneering Israelis were coming from, nor was there anything ever mentioned about people called Palestinians or the Nakba. But more about that later. Of course, we were taught about Yom HaKippurim or Yom Kippur, or as we said, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. We fasted for more than 24 hours, taking neither food nor drink on this, the most important holy day of the year. The concept of atonement that I learned was to admit within myself, with regret, with repentance, sins against our covenant with God that I had committed in the last year, and to pray for forgiveness for those sins on Yom Kippur. If I did that, great. Now I was a good person. The most obvious sins were the breaking of the 10 Commandments, which are biblically in the very basis of the covenant. I was deaf to the question inherent in the prohibitive commandments. Who was harmed? Whose family member did I kill? With whose spouse did I commit adultery? Who did I steal from? Who did I lie about? Whose spouse or stuff did I lust after or covet? The message that I got strangely took no account of those who would be harmed. And I didn't notice this lack. I didn't get this part of the message. Was the message not sent? Or was I not receptive to it? Whichever or what combination of these was the case, suffice it to say that my behavior over many subsequent years reflected this lack. It's unlikely that anyone with a similar worldview would be looked upon positively by his fellow beings whatever laudable other qualities they may have. Through the following decades, I became addicted to the products of my own thoughts, to the experience and display of mastery in all that I did, to work, and finally, to the habitual use of alcohol. But I was lucky. Through circumstances, some of which should have been under my control, I ended up in a 12-step program. The 12-step programs take a view of atonement that they call making amends. I cannot forgive myself or be forgiven until I admit to the person whom I had harmed my responsibility for the harm I had caused and ask not for forgiveness, but how can I make it right? I don't assert, I'm going to make it right by doing such and such. I ask what the other person needs, and I do that to the best of my ability. We call it cleaning up my side of the street. It has worked for me. Can it work for people who are mutually opposed? The events in Israel and Palestine on October 7th, 2023, and their aftermath are writing yet another chapter in the book of mutual violence and other wrongs centered there. Depending on who tells it, this story might have begun in 1948, or in the late 1930s, or in medieval Europe, or ancient Babylon. It's just another tragic volume in the immense hysterical too, encyclopedia of human failure. I recently read in an article in the New York Times a transcript of conversations between two women, an Israeli and a Palestinian. Through these conversations, they have developed a strong friendship and deep mutual respect. They are trying to establish mutual understanding by discussing an extremely difficult subject without their dialogue breaking down. Each tells her story of suffering to the other. It is clear that both want a nonviolent end to the conflict. The Palestinian would find only a single-state solution acceptable. This engenders fear in the Israeli. She grew up during the 1967 war and would feel safe only in a homogeneous country with one religion, one ethnicity. She, the Israeli, would find acceptable safety only in a two-state solution with separate territories. But the Palestinian wants the right to return to what she sees as her land. The article ends in this impasse. Why is there impasse? Both women are motivated. Both are honest. Both are listening. Each wants to understand the other. Why is no real progress made? Each woman may admit that her side has committed atrocities and may feel guilt, but neither asks the other, how could my people make it right? Even in the admission of wrongdoing, there's no real atonement, no real making of amends. In closing, returning to the answer to the first question, I atone when I admit to the victim my wrongdoing, offer to try to make the situation right for them, and attempt to do what they ask of me. At this point, I thought I was done. I thought I was done writing this, but I began to feel uneasy, that something was missing. What came to me was, can I learn something from the process of making amends for harmful behavior? Can I change so that I'm less likely to cause that harm again to anyone? That would be an even more profound atonement. There are maybe those for whom those questions are already implicit in the intention to right their wrongdoings. But that is not the case for all of us, certainly not me. I have had to learn to ask myself, have I done this before? Is there a pattern to my actions? Can I break the pattern? How? I spent at least 50 years of my life in self-centered anger. I expressed that anger multiple times a day in everything between irritability and rage. These behaviors dug deep ruts, becoming habitual responses to anything I perceived as contrary to my view of how things should be. Years of Zen meditation did little to change this, as I consciously rejected any notion that self-centeredness, lack of empathy, was the engine that drove this. Fortunately for me, I almost got killed due to my opinion that I was the world's greatest drunk driver. That near-death experience woke me up. Through a 12-step program, I learned that I don't think much of myself, but I'm all I think about, was not an approach to life that was likely to yield happiness. I learned, paradoxically, that I needed to watch my behavior to see those ruts of habit and to see how I could behave otherwise and do it. Slowly, this has worked. I do fall back into those ruts, but less and less often. I still find myself sweating the small stuff, the ankle biters. The big stuff, not so much. As we 12-steppers say, progress, not perfection. Thanks.
Let's take a moment and go back to our refrain. Take a breath. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. I'm sorry. Two simple words. Not a simple thing to say. Or hear. Or mean. Or accept. Many cultures have practices that support the relational process of apology because it happens between us as humans. Humans exist across cultures. Typically, these connect with forgiveness and include repentance and repair, but thoughts about forgiveness, thoughts about repair, thoughts about apology differ. They differ across time, generations, families, cultures. Gary's example of the 12-step program is one such example, and there are many ways that we humans have decided to or tried to clean up our side of the street. Another apology practice that I heard about a long time ago, but I heard again and learned more about this past week is the Hawaiian practice of ho'oponopono, literally making things right, correcting things. Ho'oponopono includes many beautiful Polynesian rituals that I won't begin to talk about because I don't have personal experience, but there is a short 4-part prayer that I'll lift up and share. And those 4 parts are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, I feel remorse. Please forgive me, supplication. Thank you, gratitude. I love you, returning to love. The Ho'oponopono prayer is humble, simple, poetic, and beautiful. And it's not all, right? What comes between the apology and the request for forgiveness that helps move the relationship towards actual repair, because trust is needed to actually receive that forgiveness and be able to say thank you for it. This is the act of making amends, of making things right again. Another example of a way to apologize, and side note, I learned this on one of my 2 favorite podcasts, which is called Is My Child a Monster? Sorry, Haya. Those ones who my child is actually, and no other podcast. Spoiler alert, your kids are a monster about dealing with your child's big emotions and the big emotions that arise in you in response. So psychologist Robert Gordon offers us a 3-part apology practice that I've been using in my family and I found sometimes effective. But first, let's explore something else that he shares. And there's a TED Talk called The Power of Apology by Gordon, if you'd like to listen more to his thinking. So he also has 3 reasons, named 3 reasons for why we apologize in the first place. And this is where it gets really interesting, because he states that there are 3 reasons, but only 2 of them, or only one of them has to do with the other person. The first 2 just have to do with ourselves. They're a little more selfish. One reason why people apologize is to defend themselves and protect themselves. The second reason is to seek forgiveness for themselves. And the third reason, and the hardest reason to actually move through, is to repair the relationship. This last reason is about you and we. The first 2 are about I. The last one is about you and about us. It's about the person who was harmed and the relationship that you share. So similar to how Gary reflected on the 10 Commandments and how he was thinking about not only his actions, but how his actions would impact others, or the metaphorical him as we think about those 10 Commandments, those rules or covenants, and why we actually covenant to them. They're about protecting others, right? So our inner motivation to hold these covenants can sometimes come from a selfish place or from a place of them. The reasons that we do things aren't always motivated by others. And apologies, to move on to apologies that are motivated by an inner desire to repair a relationship come from a place of health and emotional maturity. But as I said, achieving that can be challenging. So that brings us to the 3-part apology. I personally like to think of these 3 parts. This is not something that Gordon did, but maybe it's there by him intentionally, as me, you, and we. So number 1, me, I state what I did wrong. Number 2, you, I empathize with you. I name how I think what I did made you feel, or how it affected or impacted you. And number 3, what I'll call we, is I name how, and perhaps in relationship with asking you what you need, I will repair what has been done. How I will try to not do that in the future, what I will do to make amends for the past, whatever. It has to be situationally specific, but this is about our relationship. That's why I'm calling it we. What I did wrong, how it affected you, and what I'll do to repair so our relationship can move forward. So let's talk a little bit about Judaism, because I've been talking about apology and forgiveness and haven't even mentioned Judaism yet. But this service is going to center the days of awe and Yom Kippur. So the days of awe in Judaism present another cultural practice of apology and repair. This 10-day period begins with the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah and concludes on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. The mood of the entire 10 days of awe that we are in is teshuvah, or repentance. A period of teshuvah, or repentance, for 10 days. Teshuvah means to return. That music that we heard for our opening hymn, return again, return again, return to the home of your soul, return to who you are and what you are. And for Jews, returning to connection with God, or for us, perhaps the spirit of life or inner alignment. This practice of beginning a new year by reflecting and cleaning up and repairing strikes me as so different than the typical cultural practice of New Year's resolutions in our modern United States of America. Think about it for a minute with me. Usually, New Year's resolutions are commitments that personally benefit me. I am going to decide something that I am going to do for me. It's a change, but it's not anything. It's very future focused. Although I'd like to say that Yom Kippur and the days of awe and atonement, they're future focused too. They include, we can't move forward into the future in the way that we might want to with our relationships intact if we don't take inventory and clean up. We practice clutter clearing and spring cleaning for our homes. We take our cars to the car wash. We wash the dishes. Some of us might get manicures or fancy haircuts for our dogs. Some of us even balance our checkbooks. Or at least, those of us who learned how. I did, but I don't know if my daughter ever will. How many of us routinely clear the clutter in our relationships? And what if we all decided to pause, take inventory, and assess what we'd like to make right between ourselves and others? And what if we did this not for ourselves, not out of self-preservation, but for others and for our world, so that we could move forward into the coming days and the next year in a healthy way, relationally, together? What if that was our focus collectively? So I'd like for us to have some time to discuss. I only have a tiny bit more, and then we can stay as long as we want, but not too long, because I know we have some snacks over there. Sorry again for the people on Zoom. You need to have some snacks at home and think of us. So when I began practicing Judaism in my 20s, I was raised Southern Baptist, but I do have a spiritual practice of Jewish renewal in my personal life. When I began practicing Jewish renewal in my 20s, and I attended my first Yom Kippur ritual, one part in particular struck me: the collective responsibility. And I want to speak a little bit about the part of the Yom Kippur liturgy in the section of prayers called the Vidui, which we practiced a version of earlier. In these prayers, the community gathered on Yom Kippur literally recites an alphabet of transgressions from A to Z, or Aleph to Tav, in the alphabet. And we speak these prayers aloud in plural. We speak the transgressions aloud in plural, as if we all committed them. The point is that no one of us made all of these sins or mistakes, but we as a community, we are all collectively responsible. And we beat our chests for each one. And we name the grief that we did these things. And we say sorry. We say, we're sorry. Please forgive us. Thank you. We love you. In the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the I'm sorries happen inside and they happen between people. A child who broke their sibling's toy might go and say they're sorry and make amends for the new year. It can be small. It's on a relational level. On Yom Kippur, we stand together and we say, I'm sorry, and we ask for forgiveness from God collectively. As you use, that might be forgiveness from ourselves so that we can move forward, even though we may have guilt about what's happened, maybe with more empathy or more shared responsibility. Some of us may be petitioning God, right? We have a lot of theological diversity, but some of us might be making it right with the Spirit of life. And we say, we're sorry. Please forgive us. Thank you. We love you.